My name is Janet, and I'm 26 years old. There I was, sitting at that goddamn mahogany table again, watching my family's faces stretch into those practiced smiles they'd perfected over the years. You know the ones, the kind that never quite reach the eyes, the kind that say we're performing happiness instead of actually feeling it. My birthday. 26 years on this earth, and here I am, surrounded by people who've spent half my life making me feel like I don't belong. If you're someone who has been in the midst of people who don't love you but act like they do, hit that subscribe button now, like and share this video. Also put a comment in the comment box to share your thoughts on this. The dining room felt suffocating that night. Crystal glasses catching the light from that pretentious chandelier Mom insisted we needed, casting shadows that seemed to dance mockingly across everyone's faces. Dad at the head of the table, checking his phone like he had somewhere better to be. Mom, fussing over the dinner she'd barely touched, shooting glances between me and my sister like she was watching a tennis match. And there was Sarah, my dear, beloved sister, practically vibrating with some kind of twisted excitement. I should have known something was coming. Sarah doesn't get excited about my birthday. Hell, Sarah barely remembers my birthday exists until Mom reminds her 3 days beforehand. But there she was, clutching this perfectly wrapped box like it contained the crown jewels, her smile so wide it looked like it might crack her face in half. "I have the perfect gift for you," she announced, and the way she said "perfect" made my skin crawl. There was venom wrapped in silk, malice disguised as sisterly love. The whole table went quiet, that particular kind of quiet that happens when everyone knows something you don't, when they're all in on a joke and you're the punchline waiting to happen. She slid that box across the table, and I swear I could feel the weight of everyone's expectations crushing down on me. "Open it," she urged, and I caught the way Mom's hands tightened around her wine glass, the way Dad suddenly found his plate fascinating. Inside that beautiful wrapping was a DNA testing kit. 26 years of birthday gifts, and my sister hands me a literal test of my belonging. The laughter that erupted around that table still echoes in my head, cruel, satisfied laughter that told me everything I needed to know about what they really thought of me. But here's the thing about family secrets: they have a way of turning around and biting the people who think they're untouchable. Months later, when our estate lawyer made that phone call, every single one of those smug faces went dead silent. Let me paint you a picture of the beautiful, twisted hierarchy that ruled our house. At the very top, shining like some goddamn golden idol, sat Sarah. Perfect Sarah with her perfect grades, perfect boyfriend, perfect everything. The sun rose and set on that girl's achievements, and trust me, she never let me forget it. Then there was me, the family's favorite punching bag, the one who somehow never quite fit the mold they'd carved out for what a real member of this family should look like. Different hair texture, different build, different everything. I was the square peg they kept trying to shove into their perfectly round hole, and when it didn't work, well, that was obviously my failing, wasn't it? I remember being 12, standing next to Sarah at some family friend's wedding, and hearing Aunt Linda whisper to Mom, "Are you sure they're both yours?" The way Mom's laugh came out too sharp, too quick, like she was trying to cut off the conversation before it went somewhere dangerous. But the damage was done. Even at 12, I understood that whisper, understood what it meant when adults thought you couldn't hear them. The jokes started small. "Oh, look, the mailman must have been handsome that year," Dad would say whenever someone commented on how different I looked from the rest of them. Everyone would laugh like it was the height of comedy, like my existence was some kind of elaborate punchline. Sarah learned to weaponize it early. Any time I got attention, any time I achieved something, she'd find a way to remind everyone that I was the odd one out. High school was a special kind of hell. Parent-teacher conferences where they'd introduce Sarah as our daughter and me as this is. With that tiny pause, that moment of hesitation that felt like a knife between my ribs. Sarah's achievements got framed and hung on the wall. Mine got a brief, "That's nice, honey," before being shuffled into some drawer and forgotten. Christmas mornings were the worst. Sarah's pile of presents would tower over mine, and when I'd look confused or hurt, Mom would always have the same explanation: "Well, you know how hard it is to shop for you. You're so different." Different. Their favorite word for everything wrong with me. But the cruelest part wasn't the big moments, it was the thousand tiny cuts that bled me dry over the years. Being left out of family photos because 3 looks better than 4. Having my graduation party combined with Sarah's birthday because it makes sense to do them together. Watching them beam with pride at Sarah's college acceptance while treating mine like an afterthought. They created this narrative where I was the grateful outsider, lucky to be included in their perfect family circle. I was supposed to be thankful for the scraps of affection they threw my way, grateful that they tolerated my presence at all. And for the longest time, I believed that narrative. I thought maybe they were right, maybe I didn't belong, maybe I should be grateful they kept me around at all. God, how wrong we all were. The air in that dining room felt electric that night, charged with something I couldn't name but could definitely feel crawling under my skin. Everyone was trying too hard. Mom's laughter pitched just a little too high, Dad cracking jokes that fell flat, Sarah practically bouncing in her chair like she was 7 years old again instead of 28. I should have trusted my instincts. 26 years of living with these people, and I'd learned to read the room like my life depended on it. But it was my birthday, and some stupid, hopeful part of me thought maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. Maybe this year they'd actually want to celebrate me instead of endure me. Sarah kept checking the time, kept glancing at that perfectly wrapped box sitting beside her plate like it was going to explode if she didn't get to it soon enough. The wrapping was too perfect, too deliberate. Sarah wraps presents like she does everything else, sloppy, last minute, with whatever paper she can find crumpled in the closet. But this looked like she'd spent hours on it. I can't wait any longer, she announced, and there was this gleam in her eyes that made my stomach clench. I have to give you your gift now. She grabbed that box and practically shoved it across the table at me, her excitement so thick I could taste it, bitter and wrong. Mom and Dad suddenly found their food fascinating. The kind of focused attention people give their plates when they know something terrible is about to happen, but they don't want to watch. But they couldn't help themselves. I caught them stealing glances, waiting for the show to begin. I picked up that box, and Sarah literally clapped her hands together. Go on, open it. I think it's exactly what you need. The way she emphasized need made every nerve in my body scream danger, but I was trapped. What was I supposed to do, refuse to open a birthday gift? Give them another reason to call me ungrateful? The DNA kit felt like a lead weight in my hands. For a split second, the room went completely silent, that kind of silence that happens right before a car crash, when time slows down and you realize there's nothing you can do to stop what's coming. Then Sarah started laughing. I thought it might help you figure out where you really come from, she said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, and that's when everyone else joined in. Dad's uncomfortable chuckle, Mom's nervous giggle, even the fucking dog seemed to be laughing at me. But I smiled. God help me, I smiled and said thank you, because what else do you do when your own family hands you proof that they've never considered you one of them? You swallow the humiliation, you paste on that smile, and you survive another day in hell. 3 weeks later, that kit was still sitting on my nightstand, mocking me. Every morning I'd wake up, and there it was, Sarah's cruel little joke wrapped in scientific legitimacy, waiting for me to give her the satisfaction of using it. She'd ask about it every time she saw me, that fake innocent voice. So, have you done your test yet? Like she was asking about homework instead of whether I belonged in our family. I wasn't going to give her the pleasure. That was my first instinct. Throw the damn thing in the trash and pretend it never happened. But as the days passed, something else started eating at me. Not curiosity about the results, but this burning need to finally know the truth after 26 years of feeling like an outsider in my own home. Every family gathering, every holiday, every moment when I caught them looking at me like I was some kind of puzzle they couldn't solve, it all started weighing on me differently. Maybe Sarah's cruelty had accidentally given me something I needed, a way to end the questions once and for all. So I did it. Not because Sarah wanted me to, not because I was trying to prove anything to them, but because I was tired of living in limbo. Tired of wondering if their treatment of me was justified, if maybe there really was something different about me that made me unworthy of their love. I spit in that tube on a Tuesday night, sealed it up, and mailed it off before I could change my mind. No fanfare, no announcements, no asking for anyone's opinion. For once in my life, I was doing something entirely for myself. The irony wasn't lost on me, using Sarah's weapon against uncertainty to finally get the clarity I'd been craving my whole life. Sometimes the tools meant to destroy you end up setting you free. The results came back 6 weeks later, and I didn't tell anyone. Why would I? This family had made it crystal clear that my business wasn't their business unless they could use it against me. So I kept my mouth shut and uploaded the data to our family's shared ancestry account, the one Mom had set up years ago when she was going through her genealogy phase. That's when everything started to change, and not in any way I could have predicted. It started with the whispered phone calls. Mom, who never lowered her voice for anything, suddenly closing herself in the kitchen and speaking in hushed tones that stopped the moment I walked in. Dad, who usually couldn't be bothered to tear himself away from the TV, spending hours locked in his study with the door firmly shut. Sarah stopped asking about the DNA test. Just stopped. Cold turkey. The girl who'd been practically salivating over my discomfort for weeks suddenly acted like the whole thing had never happened. She'd look right through me at family dinners, her eyes sliding past mine like I was invisible. Which, honestly, wasn't that different from usual, but there was something desperate about it now. The strangest part was how they'd all go silent whenever I entered a room. Not the usual polite quiet, but that sharp, guilty silence that happens when people get caught talking about you. I'd walk into the living room and Mom would snap her laptop shut. I'd come downstairs for breakfast and Dad would quickly end whatever phone conversation he was having. I figured they were just being their usual selves, finding new ways to exclude me, probably planning some family event I wouldn't be invited to. It wouldn't have been the first time they'd organized trips or gatherings and conveniently forgotten to mention them to me. So I ignored it all. Let them have their secrets, their whispered conversations, their guilty looks. I had bigger things to worry about than whatever new way they'd found to make me feel unwelcome. I had my results, my truth, and for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. I had no idea that their secrets were about to explode in all our faces. The call came on a Thursday morning while I was getting ready for work. Unknown number, which I almost ignored, but something made me answer. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was just dumb luck. Is this speaking with? The voice paused, and I heard papers rustling. I'm calling regarding some recent documentation that's come to our attention. This is Robert Henley from Henley, Morrison & Associates. I handle your family's estate planning. My blood went cold. Estate planning. The only reason a lawyer calls about estate planning is when someone's dead or dying, and nobody had told me anything about anyone being sick. Of course they wouldn't. Why would they include me in family health crises? I'm sorry, what documentation? I managed to ask, my voice barely steady. Recent ancestry records that have prompted some complications regarding inheritance arrangements. I think it would be best if we discuss this in person. Would you be available for a meeting this Friday at 2? Inheritance arrangements. My mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. Had they finally found a legal way to cut me out completely? Was this their master plan? Prove I didn't belong and then make it official? Will my family be there? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Another pause. Yes, they'll be attending as well. I've already contacted them. The meeting is at our downtown office. They'd already contacted them. Of course they had. I was probably the last person to know about whatever bombshell was about to drop. Story of my damn life. I hung up feeling like I was walking toward my own execution. Friday at 2 o'clock, I'd finally learn exactly how unwanted I really was. 26 years of feeling like an outsider, and now I was about to get the legal documentation to prove it. I had no idea I was walking into the complete opposite of what I expected. Walking into that law office felt like walking into my own funeral. The receptionist directed me to a conference room where my family was already seated, Mom clutching her purse like a life preserver, Dad staring at his hands, and Sarah looking like she'd been crying. None of them would meet my eyes when I sat down. Robert Henley was one of those lawyers who looked exactly like central casting would order, gray suit, silver hair, the kind of authoritative presence that made you sit up straighter. He had a thick file spread across the mahogany table, and when he looked at me, I saw something that surprised me: sympathy. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice careful and measured. "I'll get straight to the point. 3 days ago, I received a call from someone claiming to be a relative of this family. They'd seen ancestry records that had recently been uploaded to a shared family account. My stomach dropped. My DNA results. This was about my DNA results, and I was about to be legally disowned in front of a lawyer. I gripped the arms of my chair, preparing myself for the blow. The caller identified herself as Margaret Caldwell, your father's sister-in-law. Henley looked directly at Dad, whose face had gone chalk white. She felt compelled to contact me after seeing certain genetic markers that forced her to reveal a family secret that's been buried for over 30 years. Wait. What? I looked around the table, confusion replacing dread. If this was about proving I didn't belong, why did Dad look like he was about to pass out? Margaret informed me that in the early 1990s, there was an affair. The words hung in the air like smoke. Your father, David, and Margaret's sister Ellen had a brief relationship while David was engaged to your mother. Mom made it sound like all the air had been punched out of her lungs. Sarah's face crumpled, and she started crying again. But I sat there frozen because this wasn't the story I'd expected to hear. Ellen became pregnant, Henley continued, his voice gentler now. She moved away, had the child, and gave the baby up for adoption. That child was placed with a family who later had a biological daughter of their own. The room started spinning. No, this couldn't be happening. The DNA results uploaded to your family account show a clear genetic connection to David. Henley's eyes found mine across the table. You're David's biological son. Sarah, however. He turned to my sister, whose world was clearly shattering in real time. Sarah's genetic markers indicate she is not David's biological child. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah let out a sob that sounded like an animal in pain. Mom started shaking her head back and forth, like she could somehow deny reality through force of will. Dad just sat there, staring at nothing, his entire world rewritten in the span of 30 seconds. I was the biological child. Me. The one they'd spent my entire life treating like an unwelcome guest, like someone who didn't belong, like a mistake they had to tolerate. I was David's actual son, and Sarah, perfect, golden Sarah who could do no wrong, wasn't related to him at all. The DNA test she'd given me as a cruel joke, the test meant to humiliate me and prove I was an outsider, had backfired so spectacularly that I almost laughed. Almost. Because looking at her crying face, at Mom's devastation, at Dad's shell-shocked expression, I realized this wasn't victory. This was just a different kind of destruction. But for the first time in my life, it wasn't my destruction to bear. Sarah's breakdown was spectacular and heartbreaking all at once. The girl who'd spent 26 years lording her perfect status over me was now sobbing into her hands, her shoulders shaking with the kind of grief that comes from having your entire identity ripped away. This can't be real, she kept saying through her tears. This can't be happening. And God help me, I felt sorry for her. This was the sister who'd handed me a DNA kit like a loaded weapon, who'd made jokes about my belonging at every family gathering, who'd treated me like a charity case my whole life. But watching her world collapse, I couldn't find the satisfaction I thought I'd feel. There was just this hollow ache where anger should have been. Mom hadn't said a word since the revelation. She sat there like a statue, staring at the table, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles were white. When she finally looked up, her eyes found mine for the first time in months, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Guilt. Pure, crushing guilt that seemed to age her 10 years in that moment. We didn't know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. We never knew. Dad was the worst to watch. This man who'd spent my childhood making jokes about male men and wondering out loud where I'd come from, who'd treated me like some cosmic mistake he had to live with. He couldn't even look at me. His face was gray, and his hands were trembling as the weight of 26 years of cruelty settled on his shoulders. All this time, he finally said, and his voice cracked. All this fucking time. I stayed calm through all of it. While my family fell apart around me, while Sarah cried about losing her identity and Mom sat in shocked silence and Dad processed the magnitude of what they'd done to me, I just sat there and watched. Calm as still water. Because what was I supposed to do? Comfort the people who'd made my life hell? Apologize for existing? Thank them for finally accepting me now that science had proven my worth? The irony was almost beautiful in its cruelty. The joke meant to break me, the gift designed to prove I didn't belong, had instead shattered every assumption this family had built their hierarchy on. Sarah's weapon had turned in her hand and destroyed everything she thought she knew about herself. I didn't say a word. I just let them sit with the weight of what they'd done to their own blood. When the meeting finally ended, Mr. Henley asked to speak with me privately. My family shuffled out like zombies, Sarah still crying, Mom's face blank with shock, Dad looking like he'd aged a decade in an hour. I stayed behind, waiting for whatever final blow was coming. But instead of more devastating news, Henley's expression softened completely. "I want you to understand something," he said, closing the file in front of him. "Your legal standing in this family has never been in question. Your birth certificate, your inheritance rights, your place in this family, none of that changes because of today's revelations." I stared at him, not sure what he was getting at. "What I'm saying is, you've always been David's legal son. The DNA test just confirmed what should have been obvious if anyone had bothered to look past their own assumptions." His words hit me like a physical blow, but not in a bad way. For the first time in my life, someone was confirming my worth instead of questioning it. "Your sister's status, however." He paused delicately. "That will require some legal adjustments." The power shift was so sudden it left me dizzy. 26 years of being treated like an imposter, like someone who should be grateful for scraps of affection, and now I was the one with unquestioned legal standing while Sarah's entire world crumbled. "Take some time to process this," Henley said as I stood to leave. "And remember, you don't owe anyone forgiveness just because the truth came out. What they did to you all these years, that doesn't get erased by DNA results." Walking out of that office, I felt something I'd never experienced before: power. Real, concrete power over my own narrative. For 26 years, I'd let them define me as the outsider, the odd one out, the one who didn't quite belong. I'd internalized their cruelty and made it my truth. But now I knew exactly who I was and where I belonged. I was David's son, his only son, and they were the ones who had some explaining to do. For the first time in my life, I walked away from my family with my head held high. Funny how the truth works, isn't it? 26 years of being the family punching bag, 26 years of jokes about how I didn't belong, 26 years of being treated like a charity case they had to tolerate. And it turns out I was the only one who actually belonged there all along. The drive home from that lawyer's office was the quietest my mind had been in years. No more wondering if their treatment was justified. No more questioning whether I deserved their love. No more swallowing their cruelty and calling it family tradition. The weight I'd carried my entire life, that crushing certainty that something was fundamentally wrong with me, lifted like fog burning off in sunlight. Sarah's cruel birthday gift, that DNA kit wrapped up like a joke at my expense, was supposed to be the final proof that I was an outsider. She handed it to me with such satisfaction, such certainty that it would humiliate me one last time. But jokes have a way of turning around and biting the people who think they're untouchable. Now she's the one wondering where she belongs. Now she's the one questioning every memory, every moment of favoritism, every assumption about her place in the family hierarchy. Now she knows how it feels to have your entire identity pulled out from under you. And me? I'm done carrying their shame. Done apologizing for existing. Done being grateful for the scraps of affection they threw my way when they felt like being generous. The joke meant to break me ended up breaking their illusion instead, and I'm not sorry about that. I spent 26 years believing I was lucky they kept me around. Turns out they were lucky I stayed. They lost their real son piece by piece, year by year, with every cruel comment and dismissive gesture. They drove away the one person who actually shared their blood while worshiping someone who didn't. The truth doesn't just set you free. Sometimes it burns down everything that was built on lies. And sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen. Some families are worth fighting for. Others need to earn the right to call themselves family in the first place.